The German Shepherd collapsed on the rain-slicked asphalt, her massive frame convulsing as another contraction ripped through her exhausted body. Steam rose from her matted fur in the November cold, amniotic fluid mixing with the dirty water rushing toward storm drains. Cars passed without slowing, their headlights briefly illuminating the desperate scene before disappearing into the darkness. Hidden beneath layers of grime and neglect, military dog tags caught the streetlight for just an instant, a ghost of honor buried under months of survival. Sarah Martinez gripped her steering wheel tighter, her knuckles white from more than just the cold. She'd just left another grief counseling session, another hour of being told to let go of the anger. Now this broken creature lay dying in front of her, and every maternal instinct she'd buried with her son 5 years ago suddenly screamed to life. She didn't know yet that saving this dog would force her to face the one person she'd sworn to destroy. Before we continue, please leave a like and let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. 5 years ago, Sarah Martinez had been Riverside General's most dedicated emergency room nurse, known for her steady hands and fierce compassion. Her world revolved around saving lives and raising her 12-year-old son Michael, a boy whose love for German Shepherds bordered on obsession. He collected toy dogs, read every book about the breed, and begged daily for a puppy that Sarah promised would come when we moved to a house with a bigger yard. That house never happened. On a rainy October evening in 2018, Michael was walking home from his friend's house when a drunk driver ran a red light, striking him down just 3 blocks from their apartment. The driver was James Patterson, a 28-year-old Afghanistan veteran struggling with PTSD and alcohol addiction. Patterson served only 2 years of his 5-year sentence, released early for good behavior and completion of rehabilitation programs. Sarah retired from nursing 6 months after the funeral. She couldn't bear the sight of broken children anymore, couldn't summon the strength to fight for other people's sons when she'd failed to protect her own. The grief support groups Father Miguel Santos recommended became her only social connection, though she attended more out of court mandate than choice. Her confrontation with Patterson at his parole hearing, screaming accusations across a courtroom until bailiffs restrained her, had earned her mandatory anger management counseling. The German Shepherd she now watched dying in the street represented everything she'd learned to hate. Michael had been obsessed with the breed's loyalty, their intelligence, their protective nature, their heroes. Mom, he'd insisted, they save people. After his death, Sarah couldn't bear seeing German Shepherds without thinking of promises unfulfilled, dreams destroyed. Unknown to Sarah, the suffering animal before her was Rex, a 4-year-old former military explosive detection dog who'd served 3 tours in Afghanistan. Rex had saved 47 lives during his service, detecting roadside bombs and protecting convoys until shrapnel from an IED injured his left shoulder, ending his military career. The Army had discharged him to James Patterson, his former handler, hoping the bond would help both veterans heal. Instead, Patterson's drinking worsened, and Rex became the target of drunken rages and misplaced guilt. 3 months ago, pregnant and terrified, Rex had escaped through a broken fence, surviving on garbage and rainwater in Riverside's industrial district. Now, with her puppies coming whether she was ready or not, Rex faced the ultimate test of survival on a street where nobody seemed to care whether she lived or died. Sarah sat in her car for 30 seconds, engine running, windshield wipers fighting the November rain. Just 20 minutes earlier, she'd been in Father Miguel's office, admitting for the first time that she fantasized about finding James Patterson and making him pay properly for what he'd done. Forgiveness is a process, the priest had said gently, but revenge will only poison what's left of your heart. Now, watching the German Shepherd's labored breathing fog the cold air. Sarah felt that poison coursing through her veins. This was Michael's favorite breed. This was everything she'd learned to despise. Everything that reminded her of broken promises and shattered dreams. She should drive away. Let nature take its course. Let someone else deal with the mess. Instead, she turned off the engine and grabbed the emergency blanket from her trunk. Rex lifted her massive head as Sarah approached, amber eyes wild with pain and terror. When Sarah knelt 3 feet away, Rex bared her teeth in warning, a low growl rumbling from her chest despite her weakened state. The defensive posture spoke of experience with human cruelty. This dog had learned that approaching hands meant pain. "Easy, girl," Sarah whispered, using the same gentle tone she'd once used with panicked patients. "I'm not going to hurt you." But Rex had heard those words before. From the man who'd beaten her with a belt when she couldn't stop the nightmares. Who'd kicked her ribs when she'd tried to protect herself during his drunken rages. She pressed herself against the wet pavement, trying to make herself smaller while another contraction racked her exhausted body. Sarah recognized the signs immediately. Dystocia. Difficult labor. In human terms, this would be a medical emergency requiring immediate intervention. She thought of Michael's voice from years ago. "You have to go slow with scared dogs. Mom, let them sniff your hand first. Show them you're safe." For 2 hours, Sarah sat in the rain, moving inches closer every few minutes. She talked constantly, her voice competing with thunder and traffic. She offered water from her cupped hands, pieces of granola bar from her purse. When Rex finally allowed Sarah to touch her matted fur, both women were soaked and shivering. "Doctor? Chen." Sarah spoke into her phone, cradling Rex's heavy head. "It's Sarah Martinez. I need your clinic opened. Emergency delivery." "Doctor." Emily Chen had delivered Michael and knew Sarah's history. She asked no questions, meeting them at the veterinary clinic with surgical lights already blazing. The ultrasound revealed Sarah's worst fears. One puppy was already deceased, positioned breech and blocking the birth canal. The other 2 were alive, but showing signs of distress. "Surgery will cost $3,000 minimum, doctor," Chen said quietly. "If there are complications..." Sarah thought of Michael's college fund, untouched for 5 years in a savings account she couldn't bear to close. "Do it." Throughout the examination, Rex displayed peculiar behavior. Despite her fear and pain, she kept lifting her right paw to touch Sarah's hand, the gesture almost deliberate, as if trying to communicate something urgent. When Sarah looked closely at Rex's scarred face and muscular build, something nagged at the back of her mind, a familiarity she couldn't place. "Doctor." Chen prepped for emergency cesarean while Sarah held Rex's paw, whispering reassurances she wasn't sure she believed. Rex's amber eyes stayed fixed on Sarah's face, and for a moment, the hatred Sarah had nursed for 5 years flickered uncertainly. This wasn't just any German shepherd. This was a mother fighting for her children's lives, just as Sarah had once fought for Michael's. As anesthesia took hold and Rex's eyes closed, her paw remained extended toward Sarah's hand, as if she'd finally found something worth trusting. At 2:17 a.m., Doctor Chen emerged from surgery with exhausted relief etched across her face. "She's stable," she announced, peeling off blood-stained gloves. 2 survivors, both females. One was too far gone, but we saved the mother, and the other 2. Sarah had spent 3 hours pacing the clinic's waiting room, nursing lukewarm coffee and wrestling with emotions she'd thought buried. When Dr. Chen led her to the recovery area, Rex lay unconscious on heated blankets, her breathing steady but labored. two tiny puppies, no bigger than hamsters, nursed weakly at her side. "There's something else, Doctor," Chen said, holding up a pair of corroded dog tags she'd found tangled in Rex's matted neck fur. "Your stray isn't just any dog." Sarah's hands trembled as she read the worn metal. "Rex, K9 Explosive Detection, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines, Afghanistan 2019 to 2021. Below the identification, the small notation read, 47 lives saved. 47 lives. Sarah whispered, the number hitting her like a physical blow. This wasn't just a pregnant stray. This was a war hero, a decorated veteran who'd served her country with distinction. How did she end up? That's what we need to figure out, Doctor, Chen said grimly. But first, these puppies need immediate attention. Both have congenital deformities in their front legs not uncommon in street pregnancies. They'll need specialized care if they're going to survive. Rex stirred as Sarah approached, amber eyes opening with difficulty. Despite the anesthesia fog, her gaze immediately sought Sarah's face, and that same deliberate paw movement returned, reaching for Sarah's hand with unmistakable recognition. "She knows you, Doctor," Chen observed. "I've never seen a post-surgical patient this focused." Sarah stayed through the night, sleeping fitfully in a clinic chair while Rex recovered. The puppies, Sarah found herself thinking of them as Phoenix and Journey, names that somehow felt right, required feeding every 2 hours. Rex remained too weak to care for them properly. So Sarah took over, using tiny syringes to deliver formula, while Rex watched with protective intensity. By dawn, Sarah had made a decision that surprised even her. "I'm taking them home. Sarah, these aren't ordinary dogs. Rex needs extensive rehabilitation, and the puppies will require months of specialized care, their leg deformities alone." "I'm a nurse," Sarah interrupted. "I can handle medical needs." What she couldn't explain to Dr. Chen, what she barely understood herself, was the fierce protectiveness that had awakened inside her. For 5 years, she'd felt nothing but emptiness where maternal instinct once lived. Now, watching Rex struggle to lift her head toward her vulnerable babies, Sarah felt that dormant part of herself roaring back to life. The local news picked up the story by Thursday evening. Retired nurse saves Afghanistan war hero dog and newborn puppies. The reporter focused on Rex's military service, the dramatic rescue, and Sarah's overnight transformation into an unlikely animal advocate. Social media amplified the story exponentially. #RexTheHero trended locally, bringing donations, volunteers, and, unfortunately, unwanted attention. The first anonymous message appeared Friday morning, slipped under Sarah's front door. "Give me back my dog. You don't know what you're dealing with." Saturday brought a second note. "Rex belongs to me. Stop playing hero." Sunday evening, Sarah discovered fresh footprints in her garden, cigarette butts by her mailbox, and the unsettling certainty that someone had been watching her house. Rex's behavior grew increasingly agitated as she recovered. She startled at sudden noises, positioned herself between the front door and the puppy's makeshift nursery, and spent sleepless nights pacing despite her surgical restrictions. Sarah recognized the signs: hypervigilance, anxiety responses, protective behaviors that spoke of trauma deeper than physical abuse. "She has PTSD," Sarah told Dr. Chen during a checkup. "Just like Michael's father had. Just like I probably have." The parallel struck her powerfully. Rex carried invisible wounds from whatever she'd endured, just as Sarah carried scars from losing Michael. Both of them jumped at unexpected sounds, Both struggled with trust. Both had learned that safety was an illusion that could shatter in an instant. Yet somehow, they calmed each other. Rex relaxed only when Sarah was present. Sarah found her chronic insomnia lifting when she listened to Rex's steady breathing nearby. The puppies thrived under their combined care, growing stronger daily despite their physical limitations. "You're bonding," Father Miguel observed during a pastoral visit. "I haven't seen you this engaged with anything since Michael." Sarah couldn't deny it. These three broken creatures had awakened something in her that she'd assumed was permanently dead. But as the threatening messages continued and her sense of being watched intensified, she began to understand that saving Rex had set something dangerous in motion, something that would force her to confront truths she wasn't prepared to face. The 10 days following Rex's surgery transformed Sarah's quiet existence into something she barely recognized. Her modest ranch house, once echoing with silence and grief, now hummed with constant activity. Phoenix and Journey required feeding every 2 hours, their tiny bodies struggling against birth defects that made simple movements heroic efforts. Rex, despite her own recovery needs, insisted on supervising every interaction, positioning herself where she could watch both puppies and all entry points simultaneously. Sarah found herself falling into patterns she'd thought lost forever. She woke before dawn not from insomnia but from purpose-checking temperatures, administering medications, ensuring the puppies maintained their fragile grip on life. Rex's protective instincts emerged gradually, revealing layers of sophisticated training beneath her trauma. She alerted to visitors before they reached the door, automatically positioned herself between potential threats and the puppies, and demonstrated an uncanny ability to sense Sarah's emotional state. "She's reading you," Father Miguel observed on his 3rd visit, watching Rex immediately move to Sarah's side when she grew tense discussing the anonymous threats. Military dogs are trained to anticipate their handlers' needs. The community response overwhelmed Sarah's expectations. The Riverside Gazette's follow-up stories generated donations that covered veterinary costs and more. Local businesses contributed supplies, volunteers offered help with round-the-clock care, and the Riverside Veterans Association presented Rex with a ceremonial medal during a small backyard ceremony. Sarah accepted the recognition awkwardly, still uncomfortable with attention. But she noticed how Rex seemed to understand the honor, standing straighter, alert but calm, as if remembering better times. Dr. Chen became a daily presence, monitoring the puppy's progress and Rex's psychological recovery. "Her anxiety is decreasing," she reported during Friday's visit. "But she's still hypervigilant. Something traumatic happened beyond normal street survival." That evening, alone with her laptop while the dog slept, Sarah began researching Rex's military record. The K9 database revealed Rex's impressive service history: 3 deployments, 47 confirmed lives saved through explosive detection, commendations for courage under fire. Photos showed a younger, healthier Rex wearing military gear, alert and confident beside uniformed handlers in desert landscapes. One photograph made Sarah's breath catch. Rex stood beside a young soldier whose nameplate read Patterson. Sarah stared at the screen, her coffee growing cold as recognition dawned. James Patterson, the name carved into her memory like a scar. The drunk driver who'd killed Michael. The man she'd confronted screaming at his parole hearing. Her hands shook as she searched deeper. Rex had been assigned to Patterson's unit for 18 months. After Patterson's discharge following his own combat injuries, military records showed Rex being transferred to his custody as part of a veteran support program. The last official documentation was dated 3 years ago. Sarah's mind raced through implications. Patterson owned Rex, legally, officially. Rex belonged to the man who'd destroyed Sarah's life. The anonymous threats suddenly made terrible sense. Patterson wanted his property back, and Sarah had unknowingly stolen from the person she hated most in the world. Rex stirred from her bed, lifting her head as if sensing Sarah's distress. She approached slowly, pressing her warm body against Sarah's legs with that deliberate, comforting gesture that had become their routine. Sarah's hand found Rex's head automatically, fingers working through fur that was finally beginning to regain its luster. "What did he do to you?" she whispered. Rex's behavior patterns supported Sarah's growing suspicions. The dog, startled at male voices, cringed when anyone raised their hand quickly, and showed profound anxiety around alcohol. Even the smell of Sarah's occasional evening wine sent Rex into nervous pacing. These weren't street survival responses. They were abuse indicators Sarah recognized from her nursing days treating domestic violence victims. The stalking incidents escalated through the week. Tuesday brought cigarette butts scattered across her garden. Wednesday, a phone call where someone hung up when she answered. Thursday evening, Sarah discovered her mailbox had been opened, letters scattered on the ground. Friday, her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, Dr. Chen's aunt, reported seeing a man sitting in a truck outside Sarah's house after midnight. File a restraining order, Dr. Chen urged during Saturday's visit. This is harassment. But how could Sarah explain that she suspected her stalker was the man she'd publicly threatened, the one with legitimate claim to Rex? How could she involve police when her own motives were so tangled with revenge fantasies and illegal appropriation? The media attention brought unexpected complications. Regional news stations picked up the story, framing it as heartwarming rescue narrative. Social media exploded with support, but also criticism. Some commenters questioned Sarah's right to keep military dogs. Others demanded investigations into veteran animal welfare programs. The controversy attracted activists from both sides, animal rights groups supporting Sarah, veteran advocates arguing for Patterson's property rights. Rex seemed to sense the mounting tension. Her protective behaviors intensified. She refused to leave Sarah's immediate vicinity, alert to every sound, every unexpected movement. During Phoenix's feeding times, Rex positioned herself to watch the door while Sarah was occupied. Her training showed in dozens of small ways: automatic sits when Sarah stopped walking, immediate responses to hand signals Sarah didn't remember giving, the way she checked corners before allowing Sarah to enter rooms. "She's protecting you," Father Miguel noted after witnessing Rex block his approach until Sarah gave permission to proceed. "This isn't just a grateful pet. She thinks you're her mission." The observation troubled Sarah more than she admitted. Military dogs were trained to bond with handlers, to read their needs and respond instinctively. Rex was treating Sarah like her assigned person, the one she was duty-bound to protect. But that same training meant Rex would also recognize Patterson's authority if he reasserted it. The puppies provided bright counterpoints to mounting anxiety. Phoenix, smaller but more determined, had begun moving independently despite her leg deformity. Journey, larger and calmer, showed signs of inheriting Rex's protective instincts. She positioned herself between Phoenix and anything she perceived as threatening, including the vacuum cleaner and Dr. Chen's stethoscope. Sunday evening brought the most disturbing incident yet. Sarah discovered her garden gate open, fresh footprints leading to her living room window, and a new note tucked under her windshield wiper. "You have 1 week. Give me my dog or I take her." Rex found the note before Sarah did, her agitation spiking immediately upon catching an unfamiliar scent. She paced frantically, whining and pawing at Sarah's hands, trying to communicate something urgent. When Sarah finally understood and let Rex lead her outside, the dog went straight to the footprints, hackles raised, a low growl rumbling in her throat. For the first time since finding Rex, Sarah felt genuinely afraid. Not for herself, she'd survived worse than threats from cowards who left anonymous notes. But for Rex, Phoenix, and Journey. 3 innocent creatures whose only crime was trusting her to keep them safe. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a terrible thought was taking shape: if Patterson truly owned Rex, if he had legal right to reclaim her, then Sarah's rescue had been nothing more than elaborate theft from the man who'd already taken everything that mattered. That night, Sarah double-checked her locks and kept Rex's military medals where she could see them. Tangible reminders that heroes came in many forms and that sometimes the people meant to protect them became the very threats they needed protection from. Thanksgiving evening arrived gray and bitter, the November cold seeping through Sarah's windows despite the warmth radiating from her small dining room where she'd shared turkey sandwiches with Father Miguel and Dr. Chen. The puppies had grown noticeably stronger over the past 10 days, their playful wrestling matches filling the house with sounds of life that Sarah had forgotten were possible. Rex had even begun to relax slightly, though she maintained constant vigilance, a protector who never truly slept. The doorbell's sharp ring at 7:30 sent Rex into immediate alert mode. She positioned herself between the front door and the puppy's corner, hackles raised, a low growl rumbling from deep in her chest. Sarah had learned to trust Rex's instincts. When the dog showed this level of aggression, genuine threat was present. Through the peephole, Sarah saw a man she recognized from newspaper photographs and courtroom nightmares. James Patterson stood on her porch, thin and weathered, wearing a military jacket over civilian clothes. His dark hair had gone prematurely gray, his face bearing the hollow-eyed look of someone who'd seen too much and slept too little. In his hand, he clutched a manila folder thick with documents. "Sarah Martinez," he said when she opened the door, keeping the chain engaged. His voice carried the flat effect of medicated depression, words spoken by someone going through motions rather than expressing genuine emotion. "I believe you have my dog." Sarah's world tilted sideways. 5 years of suppressed rage crashed against 5 weeks of unexpected maternal protectiveness. This was Michael's killer standing on her doorstep, demanding she surrender the creature that had awakened her capacity to love again. Rex pressed against her legs, solid and reassuring, while behind them, Phoenix and Journey continued their oblivious play. "Your dog," Sarah managed, though her voice sounded foreign to her own ears. Patterson held up the folder. "Rex belonged to my unit in Afghanistan. Military transfer papers, adoption documentation, veterinary records. She's been my property for 3 years. His eyes moved past Sarah to where Rex stood tensed and ready. "There she is. Rex, come." Rex's reaction was immediate and devastating. She dropped to her belly, submissive posture automatic, but every muscle remained coiled with terror. Her amber eyes darted between Patterson and Sarah, torn between ingrained obedience to her former handler and protective instincts toward her new family. "She's been abused," Sarah said, finding her voice. "Look at her. She's terrified of you." PTSD dogs react badly to stress, Patterson replied with clinical detachment. "She needs professional handling, military structure. You're just making her worse with amateur care." But Rex wasn't displaying PTSD symptoms. She was displaying trauma responses specific to Patterson himself. When he stepped forward, she flinched exactly as she had when Sarah first approached, anticipating violence from a source that should represent safety. "What happened the night Michael died?" The question escaped before Sarah could stop herself. Patterson's facade cracked slightly. "You know who I am. I know you killed my son. I know you were driving drunk. I know you served only 2 years for destroying my entire world." Sarah's hand found Rex's head, drawing strength from the contact. What I don't know is why your dog ended up pregnant and dying in the street. Rex was with me that night, Patterson said quietly, his voice dropping to barely audible. She was supposed to be my service dog. PTSD support. The VA program thought having a mission would help both of us. He laughed bitterly. She failed. When I needed her most, she failed. Failed how? Patterson's composure shattered completely. She was supposed to stop me from drinking, alert when I was getting too drunk to drive. That's what they trained her for: medical alerts, intervention behaviors. But that night, when I really needed her to work, she just sat there, watched me down half a bottle of whiskey. Didn't do anything to stop me from getting behind the wheel. Rex whimpered, pressing closer to Sarah. The sound carried 5 years of accumulated guilt and confusion. So you blamed her, Sarah said, understanding flooding through her. You punished her for your choices. She was supposed to save me from myself. Patterson exploded. That was her job instead. She made everything worse. How did she make it worse? Patterson's face contorted with anguish. Because she tried to save your boy instead of stopping me. When we hit him, she broke through the passenger window, jumped out while I was still figuring out what happened. By the time I got out of the truck, she was what? Sarah's voice came out as a whisper, nudging him, pushing at him with her nose. Your son was still alive, barely, and she was trying to move him out of the road. He petted her. I heard him say good boy before the ambulance came. Patterson's hands shook as he wiped his eyes. She cared more about saving a stranger's kid than protecting me from my own demons. So I made sure she understood that failure has consequences. The revelation hit Sarah like physical violence. Rex hadn't failed that night. She'd succeeded beyond any reasonable training. She'd recognized a child in mortal danger and acted on pure instinct to help. Michael's last moments hadn't been alone and terrified. They'd been comforted by a warm, protective presence who'd done everything in her power to save him. Rex tried to save Michael, Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. And you punished her for it. She should have prevented the accident, Patterson shouted. That was her job. Her job was to help you cope with PTSD, not enable your drinking. Sarah shot back. She's not responsible for your choices. Rex seemed to understand she was the subject of discussion. She looked between Sarah and Patterson with an expression of such profound guilt that Sarah's heart broke completely. This dog had spent 5 years believing she'd failed, when in reality, she'd been the only one that night who'd done the right thing. Rex, come here, Patterson commanded, his voice taking on military authority. Rex rose slowly, torn between competing loyalties. Her training demanded obedience to Patterson's commands, but her body language screamed resistance. Don't, Sarah said softly. You don't have to go with him. You're safe here. Patterson reached for Rex's collar, and everything changed. Rex's protective instincts overrode her submission training. She placed herself squarely between Patterson and Sarah, stance wide, head lowered, every inch the combat-trained guardian she'd been in Afghanistan. This wasn't the cowering, abused animal Patterson expected. This was a war hero defending her chosen family. She's chosen, Sarah said, understanding flooding through her. You don't own her loyalty anymore. Patterson's anger exploded into violence. He lunged forward, trying to grab Rex's collar by force. Rex responded with precisely calibrated aggression enough to neutralize the threat without causing serious injury. She caught Patterson's wrist in her jaws, applying pressure until he released his grip, then backed away, maintaining defensive position. Neighbors were already calling police as Patterson screamed threats about property theft and military animals. Rex held position, professional and controlled. While Sarah called Dr. Chen and Father Miguel for support. "She's legally mine," Patterson shouted as sirens approached. "Military dogs belong to their handlers. You can't just steal someone's property." But looking at Rex alert, protective, finally free to be the hero she'd always been, Sarah knew that some bonds transcended legal ownership. Rex had made her choice, and for the first time in 5 years, she'd chosen correctly. As police cars pulled up, Sarah knelt beside Rex and whispered the words Michael would have wanted her to say, "Good girl. You're a very good girl." Rex's tail wagged once, briefly, and in that moment Sarah understood that healing could begin from the most unexpected places, even from the broken heart of the dog who'd tried to save her son. The legal machinery ground into motion with devastating efficiency. By Monday morning, Patterson had retained Marcus Webb, a veterans' rights attorney who specialized in military property disputes. Webb arrived at the emergency custody hearing with a briefcase full of irrefutable documentation, Rex's military service records, discharge papers transferring her to Patterson's custody, veterinary records from their first year together, and photographs showing Rex in Patterson's home before her disappearance. "Your Honor," Webb addressed Judge Maria Santos with practiced authority, "this is a straightforward case of property recovery. Mr. Patterson is a decorated Afghanistan veteran with legal ownership of a military working dog. Mrs. Martinez, however well-intentioned, has no legal standing to retain an animal that belongs to my client." Sarah's court-appointed attorney, David Kim, fought valiantly with limited ammunition. "Your Honor, we have extensive evidence of animal abuse. Veterinary records show signs of systematic mistreatment. Rex displays classic trauma responses specific to Mr. Patterson's presence." "Irrelevant," Webb countered smoothly. "PTSD dogs often display anxiety around their handlers. It's a documented symptom, not proof of abuse. Mr. Patterson completed court-mandated alcohol treatment, maintains steady employment, and has every right to reclaim his property." Judge Santos, a stern woman in her 50s who'd seen too many custody battles over the years, reviewed the evidence with growing frustration. "Mr. Kim, does your client have any documentation supporting her custody claim?" "The adoption process was ongoing when Mr. Patterson's ownership became known. My client has invested significant resources in medical care, provided round-the-clock nursing for Rex's recovery, and created a stable environment for the puppies, which wouldn't have been necessary if Mrs. Martinez hadn't taken someone else's dog," Webb interjected. The hearing's stress devastated Rex's fragile recovery. Dr. Chen had warned that courtroom exposure to Patterson could trigger psychological regression. But Sarah underestimated the severity. Rex stopped eating completely after seeing Patterson in the courthouse hallway. She paced continuously, panted despite cool weather, and developed stress-induced diarrhea that required emergency intervention. Worse, Phoenix and Journey began declining in Rex's absence. Rex had been their primary comfort source during Sarah's necessary court appearances. Without her reassuring presence, the puppies became listless, refused formula, and showed signs of failure to thrive that terrified Dr. Chen. "This is killing all 3 of them," Dr. Chen told Sarah bluntly during Wednesday's emergency visit. "Rex's stress response is triggering medical complications. Her surgical site is inflamed, her blood pressure is dangerously elevated, and she's showing signs of severe depression. The puppies are bonded to her separation. This early could be fatal." Sarah watched Rex lying motionless in her bed, ignoring food and water. Amber eyes fixed on nothing. This wasn't the same dog who'd protected her from Patterson, who'd shown such fierce maternal devotion just days earlier. This was a broken creature retreating into psychological withdrawal. The media circus made everything worse. National news outlets picked up the story, framing it as a battle between veterans' rights and animal welfare. Social media exploded with passionate opinions from people who knew nothing about the actual situation. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse, some supporting Sarah's rescue efforts, others demanding respect for military property rights. Sarah's savings evaporated under legal fees that mounted exponentially. David Kim worked pro bono, but court costs, expert witness fees, and veterinary bills consumed Michael's college fund with terrifying speed. Her peaceful retirement became a nightmare of depositions, character witnesses, and media interviews that left her emotionally drained. Worse, confronting Patterson daily triggered Sarah's own suppressed trauma. She began having panic attacks in court. Nightmares about Michael's death returned with renewed violence, and she found herself unable to eat or sleep properly. Father Miguel expressed serious concern about her psychological state during Thursday's counseling session. "You're destroying yourself," he said gently. "This fight is consuming you the same way grief did 5 years ago. You have to ask yourself, is this about justice or revenge?" The question haunted Sarah through sleepless nights. Was she fighting for Rex's well-being, or using the dog as a proxy for punishing Michael's killer? The line between protecting an innocent animal and satisfying her own need for vindication had become impossibly blurred. Friday brought the crushing blow Sarah had dreaded. Patterson, through his attorney, offered a compromise. He would retain ownership of Rex but allow Sarah to keep Phoenix and Journey permanently. "It's generous," Webb explained during mediation. "My client recognizes Mrs. Martinez's attachment to the puppies and her excellent care during their critical period." Dr. Chen's medical assessment made the choice even more agonizing. "Rex may not survive separation from the puppies," she admitted during private consultation, "but continued legal stress might kill her regardless. Her current trajectory is unsustainable. And the puppies. They need Rex for psychological development, but they're young enough to potentially bond with you as primary caregiver. It's not ideal, but it might be their only chance at survival." Father Miguel counseled extensively about forgiveness versus justice, about the difference between protecting innocence and seeking personal vengeance. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "love means letting go of our own needs to serve something greater." The darkest moment came Saturday evening. Sarah sat on her living room floor, watching Rex ignore food while Phoenix and Journey whimpered nearby, too weak to nurse properly. Michael's photograph on the mantel seemed to reproach her. Was she honoring his memory by fighting, or dishonoring it by allowing her need for revenge to endanger innocent lives? Rex struggled to her feet and approached Sarah slowly, with tremendous effort. She lifted her paw and placed it on Michael's photograph, the same deliberate gesture she'd made consistently since their first night together. But now the motion seemed different, not seeking comfort, but offering it. "You understand, don't you?" Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You know I'm failing again." Rex pressed her head against Sarah's chest with what felt like forgiveness. This dog who'd tried to save Michael, who'd endured 5 years of punishment for showing mercy, was somehow offering absolution to the woman who couldn't save either of them. The phone rang at midnight. Patterson, calling directly despite restraining orders. His voice carried exhaustion rather than anger. "This is killing her," he said without preamble. "I can see it on the news. Rex is dying because we're fighting over her." "Then stop fighting," Sarah replied. "I can't. She's all I have left of who I used to be. Before everything went wrong." Patterson's voice broke. "But I don't want to watch her die because of my choices. Again." Sunday morning brought the final deadline. Judge Santos would rule Monday on temporary custody pending full trial. Sarah had 24 hours to decide continue fighting and risk losing all 3 dogs to legal and medical catastrophe, or surrender Rex and hope that saving the puppies would be enough redemption for a lifetime of failures. Rex lay motionless in her bed, breathing shallow and labored. While Phoenix and Journey pressed against Sarah's legs seeking comfort she felt incapable of providing. The war hero who'd saved 47 lives was dying slowly in Sarah's living room, and she was powerless to stop it. Monday morning's custody hearing began with Marcus Webb's methodical presentation of Patterson's rehabilitation. The attorney had orchestrated a parade of character witnesses that painted his client as a reformed veteran deserving compassion and legal recognition of his property rights. "Your Honor," Webb addressed Judge Santos with polished confidence, "Mr. Patterson has completed court-mandated alcohol treatment, maintained 18 months of sobriety, and holds steady employment at Riverside Manufacturing. His AA sponsor, Thomas Mitchell, will testify to his commitment to recovery." Mitchell, a grizzled construction foreman with 20 years of sobriety, spoke earnestly about Patterson's dedication to the 12-step program. "James hasn't missed a meeting in 18 months. He works the steps, sponsors newcomers, and takes responsibility for his past actions. Rex represents his chance to rebuild the life he lost to alcohol and trauma." Dr. Richard Hayes, a VA psychiatrist, testified about Patterson's PTSD treatment progress. "Military working dogs provide invaluable therapeutic benefits for combat veterans. Mr. Patterson's bond with Rex predates his alcohol problems. She represents stability and purpose essential to his continued recovery." Webb then revealed Sarah's identity with calculated precision. "Your Honor, Mrs. Martinez isn't a disinterested Good Samaritan. She is the mother of Michael Martinez, the child killed in the 2018 accident involving my client. She publicly threatened Mr. Patterson at his parole hearing, requiring bailiff intervention. This custody dispute represents a calculated revenge scheme disguised as animal rescue." The courtroom erupted in whispers as media representatives scribbled frantically. Sarah felt exposed, vulnerable, as if her most private wounds had been displayed for public consumption. Patterson avoided her eyes, slumped in his chair like a man carrying unbearable weight. "Mrs. Martinez," Webb continued ruthlessly, "has manipulated this situation to inflict maximum psychological damage on a recovering veteran. She's weaponized my client's former service animal against him, exploiting Rex's military conditioning to serve her personal vendetta." David Kim rose for Sarah's defense with documentation that told a different story. "Your Honor, Dr. Emily Chen will present veterinary evidence of systematic abuse spanning years. Mrs. Martinez discovered Rex dying in the street. She didn't seek this confrontation. It found her." Dr. Chen took the stand with clinical precision, describing Rex's injuries in medical terms that made the abuse undeniable. Healed rib fractures consistent with blunt force trauma, scarring patterns suggesting repeated beatings, chronic stress responses indicating prolonged psychological torment. These injuries occurred over months or years, not from street survival. Furthermore, Dr. Chen continued, consulting her notes, "Rex's behavior patterns demonstrate specific trauma responses to Mr. Patterson's presence. She displays submissive posturing, involuntary urination, and extreme anxiety, classic indicators of conditioned fear toward a particular individual." The case's turning point came when David Kim presented security footage from the November night Sarah discovered Rex. The grainy video showed Patterson's truck following Sarah's car to the clinic, then circling the building repeatedly before parking across the street. The timestamp confirmed Patterson knew Rex's location, but chose surveillance over assistance. Mr. Patterson watched Mrs. Martinez struggle for hours to save Rex's life. Kim argued. He made no effort to identify himself or offer help. Only after Rex's story gained media attention did he assert ownership claims. Judge Santos leaned forward, studying Patterson's demeanor. "Mr. Patterson, can you explain why you didn't intervene when you discovered Rex in medical distress?" Patterson's composed facade cracked visibly. I wasn't ready. Seeing her again brought back everything I'd tried to forget." "So you abandoned her twice," Sarah said quietly, speaking for the first time during proceedings. "Mrs. Martinez," Judge Santos warned. "Please let your attorney know," Sarah interrupted, rising to her feet. "I need to say this." She turned toward Patterson, 5 years of suppressed anguish flowing into words. "You're not fighting for Rex because you love her. You're fighting because losing her means accepting that you destroyed everything good in your life through your own choices." "Your Honor," Webb protested. This emotional outburst, "Let her finish," Judge Santos commanded. Sarah's voice gained strength as clarity emerged from months of confusion. "I thought I wanted revenge against you, James. I thought taking Rex was my way of hurting you back. But that's not why I'm fighting." She gestured toward the empty defendant's table where Rex should have been sitting. "I'm fighting because Rex tried to save my son. She succeeded partially. Michael lived long enough to pet her, to feel comfort in his final moments because of her courage." Tears streamed down Patterson's face as Sarah continued. "Rex doesn't belong to either of us. She belongs to herself, to her own dignity as a decorated veteran who served with honor, and she's chosen where that dignity is respected." The judge called for Rex to be brought into the courtroom for direct assessment. When Dr. Chen led her through the doors, Rex appeared gaunt but alert, scanning the room with military precision. She identified Sarah immediately, moving to her side with obvious relief. When Patterson called her name, Rex froze, every muscle tensing in anticipation of violence that never came. "Rex, come," Patterson commanded with military authority. Rex looked between Patterson and Sarah with visible conflict. Her training demanded obedience, but her body language screamed resistance. Finally, she made a choice that surprised everyone. She positioned herself between Patterson and Sarah, facing Patterson but leaning against Sarah's legs. Not aggressive, but unmistakably protective. Patterson's breakdown was complete and devastating. "She hates me," he sobbed. "I ruined everything. My service, my sobriety, my chance at redemption. I turned the best thing in my life into something that fears me." "Mr. Patterson," Judge Santos said gently, "do you believe Rex would be better served in Mrs. Martinez's custody?" Patterson nodded through his tears. "Sarah saved her when I couldn't. She gave Rex something I never could, a family worth protecting." He looked directly at Sarah for the first time. "I don't deserve forgiveness for what I did to your son. But maybe Rex can have the life I stole from both of us." Father Miguel approached the witness stand unexpectedly, having been granted permission to testify as character witness. "Your Honor, I've counseled both Mrs. Martinez and Mr. Patterson through their respective traumas. This case isn't about property ownership, it's about healing. Rex has become a bridge between two broken people, helping them find purpose beyond their shared tragedy." The hearing's final surprise came from Patterson's former unit members, who'd driven from 3 states away to testify. Sergeant Maria Gonzalez spoke for the group. "Your Honor, we served with Rex in Afghanistan. She saved our lives repeatedly. If she's chosen Mrs. Martinez as her family, then that's where she belongs. Military dogs earn the right to choose their retirement, and Rex has made her choice clear." Judge Santos recessed for deliberation, leaving both sides to contemplate the emotional wreckage of a custody battle that had become something far more complex, a reckoning with guilt, forgiveness, and the complicated mathematics of healing. Rex remained at Sarah's side throughout the recess, alert but calm, as if she understood that her fate hung in the balance. Phoenix and Journey, brought by Dr. Chen for moral support, pressed against Rex's sides, a family unit that had formed despite, or perhaps because of their shared brokenness. When court reconvened, Judge Santos had reached a decision that would reshape all their lives. Christmas Eve arrived with the first snow of winter, soft flakes drifting past Sarah's living room windows where a Douglas fir stood adorned with homemade ornaments and military medals. 1 month had passed since Judge Santos awarded permanent custody of Rex, Phoenix, and Journey to Sarah, a decision that had reshaped not only their small family but the entire community's understanding of healing and redemption. The judge's ruling had been unequivocal. This court finds that the best interests of these animals are served in Mrs. Martinez's custody. Mr. Patterson's voluntary relinquishment of claims, combined with his commitment to intensive treatment, demonstrates remarkable growth and genuine concern for Rex's welfare. Patterson had surprised everyone by standing immediately after the verdict to address Sarah directly. "I can't undo what I did to your son or to Rex," he'd said, his voice steady despite tears. "But I can make sure they both get the future they deserve." True to his word, Patterson entered a long-term residential treatment program for veterans with PTSD and addiction, voluntarily signing over all rights to Rex while pledging his military pension to Sarah's emerging rescue operation. The transformation of Sarah's modest home into Second Chance's sanctuary had happened gradually, organically. What began as caring for 3 special needs dogs evolved into a haven for veteran animals needing rehabilitation and rehoming. Rex's story had inspired national attention to military working dog welfare, resulting in legislation requiring lifetime care guarantees for retiring service animals. Dr. Chen became Sarah's business partner, establishing the sanctuary's medical protocols and training programs. "Rex isn't just a success story," she explained to visiting journalists. "She's become a model for how trauma healing works individual recovery within supportive community structures." Rex's own recovery had been remarkable. Her PTSD symptoms hadn't disappeared entirely, but they'd become manageable through routine, purpose, and unconditional love. She'd been trained as a therapy dog for grief counseling groups, her gentle presence helping others navigate loss and trauma. Father Miguel often requested Rex's participation in his sessions, witnessing how her calm strength helped grieving families find peace. "She understands suffering," Father Miguel observed during Sunday's Christmas Eve service, where Rex lay quietly beside Sarah in the front pew. "But more importantly, she understands that suffering doesn't have to be permanent." Phoenix and Journey had become celebrities in their own right, ambassadors for disabled pet adoption nationwide. Phoenix, now walking steadily despite her leg deformity, demonstrated daily that physical limitations needn't define potential. Journey, larger and more protective like her mother, showed remarkable intuition about human emotions, naturally gravitating toward anyone experiencing distress. The sanctuary's success brought unexpected healing for the entire community. Veterans' families brought their struggling service animals to Sarah for rehabilitation. Local schools invited Rex for educational visits about military service and animal heroism. The Riverside Gazette ran weekly features on successful adoptions, transforming the town's reputation from a place where tragedies happened to a place where healing was possible. Patterson's monthly letters from treatment had become part of Sarah's healing process too. His supervised visits with Rex, approved by his therapists and Dr. Chen, initially caused anxiety for both dog and handler. But gradually, Rex began responding to Patterson without fear, recognizing his genuine change. Their relationship would never return to what it was, but they'd found a different kind of peace, one built on acceptance rather than ownership. Forgiveness is complicated, Sarah wrote in her journal that Christmas Eve morning. I don't forgive James for killing Michael. I probably never will. But I've learned to forgive myself for surviving when my son didn't. Rex taught me that guilt over circumstances beyond our control is just another kind of prison. The most profound moment had come 3 weeks earlier when Sarah finally visited Michael's grave with Rex. She'd avoided the cemetery for 5 years, unable to face the finality of that small headstone. But Rex had seemed drawn there during their daily walks, always turning toward the cemetery entrance with purposeful attention. Michael's grave sat beneath an oak tree, his headstone simple and dignified. Michael James Martinez, beloved son, forever 12. Sarah knelt in the winter grass while Rex approached the marker independently, sniffing carefully before lying down with her head resting against the cold stone. He would have loved you, Sarah whispered, tears freezing on her cheeks. He would have been so proud that you tried to save him. Rex remained motionless for 20 minutes, as if keeping vigil. While Sarah finally said the goodbye she'd been unable to voice 5 years earlier. When they left, Sarah felt lighter somehow, carrying Michael's memory without the crushing weight of survivor's guilt. Now, Christmas Eve evening brought snow and peace to their warm home. Phoenix practiced her walking while Journey supervised protectively, both puppies growing stronger daily under Rex's devoted care. Sarah sat by the fire, reading The Night Before Christmas aloud to her unusual family while Rex maintained alert watch over all of them. Father Miguel and Dr. Chen arrived for dinner bearing gifts and news. The state legislature passed the Military Working Dog Protection Act. Dr. Chen announced, every retiring service animal gets guaranteed lifetime care. Rex's story made the difference. And, Father Miguel added with a smile, the Archbishop approved funding for a new grief counseling center. Rex will be the official therapy dog. As evening deepened, Sarah reflected on the year's unexpected gifts. She'd lost Michael forever, but gained purpose in honoring his memory through saving other innocent lives. She'd confronted her deepest hatred and found that love was indeed stronger than vengeance. She discovered that families could be chosen, that healing could emerge from the most broken places. Rex padded over to Michael's photograph on the mantel, performing her familiar ritual of touching her paw to the glass. But tonight, instead of seeking comfort, she seemed to be offering it a promise that his memory was safe with her chosen family. Outside, snow continued falling gently, covering Riverside in pristine white that made everything look new again. Inside, Sarah surrounded herself with the warmth of unconditional love from 3 remarkable dogs who'd taught her that sometimes the greatest gifts come in the most unexpected packages, and that healing happens not when we forget our pain, but when we transform it into something beautiful. Sarah's story with Rex, Phoenix, and Journey teaches us that family isn't always found in blood relations. Sometimes it's forged in moments of crisis when strangers choose to care for one another. The greatest act of gratitude isn't saying thank you, but paying forward the kindness we've received to others who desperately need it. Rex's journey from decorated war hero to abandoned street dog to beloved family member reminds us that second chances aren't just about redemption. They're about recognizing the inherent worth in every living being, regardless of their past or present circumstances. Sarah's transformation from a grieving mother consumed by revenge to a healing woman building bridges of compassion shows how love, when given freely, multiplies rather than diminishes. The moral lesson echoes through every relationship in this story. True family forms when we choose to protect, nurture, and sacrifice for one another, without expecting anything in return. Rex chose to protect Michael, even when it meant defying her handler. Sarah chose to save Rex despite her fear of German Shepherds. Patterson chose to let Rex go despite his legal rights. Dr. Chen, Father Miguel, and the community chose to support this unlikely family because they recognized something sacred in their bond. Families built on choice rather than obligation often prove the strongest, because they're sustained by gratitude rather than mere duty. Have you ever witnessed someone in desperate need being ignored by passers-by, like Rex was that November night? What stopped you from helping? Or what motivated you to act?